Chapter 15. Poison. My village was a sanctuary of equality, where no pony's cutie mark allowed them to feel superior. It was a special place. And you and your friends took it away! The hive remained on my mind for the next couple of days. I just couldn't stop thinking about them, you know? How desperate they had been. How they had to ally with a hated enemy simply to survive. And how the Alliance had led to them being buried deep underground in a fallout shelter. For 2 centuries. Look, from what Cobalt has told me about them, I know they were once meant to be a big evil who just wanted to use us as love batteries in a not-feel-good way. But I couldn't help but feel sorry for them. It seemed that life had dealt them shit cards even before the apocalypse. I don't know, maybe it had been their own fault, but I just don't know. Would we find them there? An empty stable? Bones? I wasn't even sure why I was beginning to care so much. I was in this for the caps, after all. Just had to get what I needed, that was all. Damn it. Well, at least we were almost there if my Pip-Buck's map was accurate, and it hadn't given me a reason to doubt it yet. Actually, just another couple minutes walk. There wasn't anything around us for miles, and we hadn't seen a single road in a whole day. No buildings, no signs of pre-war civilization anywhere. Just rocks and dirt for as far as the eye could see. It was enough to make me appreciate just how empty it was up here. I mean, go south a little, and you couldn't take a dump without running into either a trade caravan or a nosy raider. We hadn't even seen a single one of the latter these past couple of days. I guess it was a symptom of the lack of settlements. I guess ponies really are put off by the cold further up. There wasn't a lack of population to the west, east, and south or central Equestria. Not that there was literally nothing out here. Red Eye's forces had proven that. And damn, I bet they were surprised to see us, though. Things just seemed to be scarcer, north of Canterlot. What's the deal with this place, Cobalt? The unicorn looked back towards me, not breaking his stride. What? This place, all of this, I said, gesturing to the everything or lack thereof around me. This place. The other day, you said that there aren't really any settlements up here between what used to be our town and Van Hoover. Why is that? Aside from the cold. It's no colder in this place than many others, Stripe noted. Just near Haven is where you can feel the drop in temperature. True, he conceded. Well, I guess it's just because it was one of the less populated areas of Equestria, at least for the civilian population. I mean, from here, we have Van Hoover directly west, what used to be our town to the east, the Empire to the north, and Canterlot due south. And in between it all, we have 3 major pre-war towns and not much else. Haven and Prosperity, Stripe noted. But what is the third? Buckingham, Cobalt answered. According to our files at Tenpony, it was the biggest pre-war town in the area. Had big factories churning out guns and supplies for the war effort. It must have made an inviting target for the Zebra Empire, Stripe stated. A few battles were fought around here, though not nearly as many as near Huffington, Cobalt explained. Aside from the military presence, you would have seen a few mining operations too. Of course, all of that was abandoned after the last day. Any survivor settlements made since then up here fell into ruin, leaving only gangs. We haven't seen those either in a while, I pointed out. I was almost expecting to see a group in Haven. Though, I guess between the griffins and the ghouls... Cobalt trailed off. Still, probably a few hold up in the other town, and maybe the odd building off the beaten path. Here, though, nothing. But stable 84, I concluded. Makes sense it was here. I doubt Chrysalis would like her hive under a major population center, where simple roadworks could cause major headaches. I guess if I was her, I would have also set up in one of the least populated areas of Equestria. Speaking of which, we had just come to a small dip in the terrain where my Pip-Buck's HUD had made the dinging sound it always made when I found something important. And this time, the name that scrolled out in my vision was something very specific. Stable 84. We were here. We were actually here. Somewhere, anyway. I couldn't actually see it just yet. It's here somewhere, I informed the others. We're right on top of it. I led the way as we made our way down the hill, entering what was essentially a big misshapen bowl in the ground with an outcropping of rock resting up against the most vertical surface of the bowl. As we got closer to the outcropping, a dark shadow across it was revealed not to be a shadow at all. Rather, it was a pitch-black entrance to some kind of cave. That looks promising, Cobalt commented as we slowly trotted our way over to the mouth of the cave. Anything underground screams stable to me. Well, there is also a hive, I reminded him. I haven't forgotten. All the more promising. We froze, stopping mere feet from the dark entrance that was probably the entrance to the Equestrian hive. Now, why would we stop so suddenly? I mean, we were so close. Here it was, the very thing we had been looking for. I mean, what could possibly prevent us from immediately jumping into a big, dark and scary-looking cave? Try a group of mangled steel ranger corpses. Holy shit. The bodies were largely concealed by the darkness inside, but now we were close, we could clearly make out their shapes and features. There were 5 of them, their power armor busted open in several places with scraps of it strewn all over the cave's entranceway. I took a step forward, trying to hold on to my rapidly fleeing nerves as I picked up a stray helmet and, not stray, there's a skull in that thing! Yeah! I threw the fucking thing back into the cave. Judging by the smashed visor, it was trashed beyond repair anyway. I just wish the impact hadn't caused the skull to come rolling out. Oh, Scrap Heap, you take us to the most lovely of locations, Stripe said with far more amusement than I was comfortable with right now. Stripe, they're still Rangers! Something that could take them out like that? I don't want to meet it. Cobalt hummed, kneeling beside some of the skeletons and picking up a few pieces of broken armor. Whatever it was, it tore their armor to shreds. They've been here a while, and I don't think their weapons are in working condition anymore. Yeah, I had to agree. Their battle saddles were mangled with the rest of their armor. The only one that seemed even remotely fixable was... Wait, was that what I thought it was? Oh dear Celestia, it was. Hey guys, look at... And then I was flying. Why was I flying? All of my breath was forced from my body as I smashed into one of the rocky surfaces of the entrance and... Yes, Pip-Buck, I felt those ribs being snapped too. Crack. I heard the sound of Stripe's rifle while, well, the world was swimming and everything really hurt. Really, this wasn't fun at all. Ouch. Turning was painful, but I reached out to my saddlebags and fumbled for a healing potion. The moment I found one, I downed it as quickly as I could, and my ribs began to pop themselves back together. Oh yeah, that still hurt. My pit buck wasn't showing any warnings at least, but every single part of my torso was still in ridiculous amounts of pain. How many ribs did I just bust then? Well, Med-X it is. I had just finished giving myself a partial dose from the syringe when I looked back out of the cave, where there were 2 green bars on my EFS, and a single red one. A red one belonging to a familiar ghoul who had my friends pinned telekinetically to the ground. "Starlight!" I shouted, and I immediately pulled out my shotgun before approaching the ghoul, though not too close. "Let them go!" That mare was here. I could hardly believe it. Had she been looking for us ever since our town? She must have been tenacious. And insane. My friends were both struggling against their confines, though they could barely move beneath her magic. Stripe's rifle lay at Starlight's hooves, and as I studied the ghoul herself, she had ditched the cloak, and I could see more of her light purple coat clinging to her dried skin. Her mane and tail were both in battered tufts, her milky eyes glaring daggers at me. And then there was... that bitch. Lose the equals sign? I could barely see it among what was left of her coat, but it was there. Her cutie mark. Starlight, on her part, just growled. She sounded almost feral. "You. I've got you," the ghoul said through gritted teeth. "You ruined everything! My village is gone! Every pony ran away! You monsters!" Says the one who enslaved ponies over generations, preaching a philosophy she did not practice. Stripe taunted despite her restraints. "Fools! I needed my mark to take theirs away!" Starlight Glimmer retorted. "It wouldn't have worked otherwise." What? But the staff was a stick I found in the desert! Oh shit. I never needed it. But I couldn't let them know I had my mark. They would have... I couldn't have. But I never needed it. So now I'll take your marks, my little ponies. Sets engaged. I targeted her horn, which was brightening as she prepared her spell. Not today, Glimmy. I engaged the spell and... click? Starlight smirked at me. Wait, had she engaged my safety? Plan B? Starlight yelped as I threw my shotgun in her face, drawing my pistol as she clutched her newly bleeding muzzle. Likewise, as she stumbled, her grip on my friends also faltered. It was enough that they were able to break free, each rolling away from the insane mare as Stripe made sure to grab her rifle as she did so. I wasted no more time in lifting my pistol and firing. Starlight gave an enraged shriek as a shield formed around her, absorbing gunfire from myself and Stripe and a few magic bolts from Cobalt. How strong could her shield be? If we just kept our fire long enough, then we had to reload. The moment the gunfire stopped, Starlight released her shield and shot towards us. Cobalt was first, and he tried to raise a magical barrier to intercept her. She, however, just charged her horn with some kind of spell that allowed her to barge straight through it like it was a paper bag. I reloaded my gun as Stripe did, only for me to be knocked to the ground as I was hit by a tactical Cobalt. Stripe was next, and just as she raised her gun to fire, she was hit by a magic bolt that sent her weapon again from her grasp. Stripe gave a shout of frustration as she moved to hit Starlight, only to be picked up like a doll and casually thrown clean out of the bowl. How powerful is this psychopath? While Cobalt was still recovering, Starlight charged directly at me as I got to my hooves. I didn't even have time to ready my pistol. She knocked it aside and telekinetically slammed me back into the ground. Oh, I was going to need more med-X. She smirked as she stood over me, preparing that spell. Distraction time. So, you tricked an entire town into being your slaves, preaching equality while you were always secretly superior? I asked, getting the desired response as she went wide-eyed, her horn faltering. Explains why your house wasn't in the 2 rows the rest were. Unequal to the last. Quiet! She bellowed, slamming me down again. Ouch. I had to. It was for the best. For them or for you? Cobalt demanded to know as he let off a magic bolt into the side of Starlight's head. It wasn't lethal, but it was enough to create a severe burn as Starlight fell with a screech of pain. This was our chance. I snatched up my pistol and opened fire. Starlight was only able to create a half shield to block them after the first bullet bit into her hide. Her eyes were burning with fury, the ghoul opening her mouth to either scream or say something. I would never find out, due to the zebra that bucked her to the ground. Yeah, how does it feel to have broken ribs? My elation was short-lived, however, as Starlight gave a shout as her horn lit up again. While still sprawled on the ground, bleeding heavily, she unleashed one hell of a magical beam trailing across the landscape. We were all forced to dive to the ground as we struggled to avoid being sliced in two by her wild beam, the attack leaving a scorched trail wherever it went. You won't take my home from me! Starlight screamed, releasing her beam and unsteadily rising back to her hooves. I will remake it, and you will be my first subject! Subject? She fancies herself a princess, then, Stripe said mockingly, she and the rest of us getting back up. Foolish pony. I thought all were meant to be equal. Starlight's eye twitched, and we took that moment to open fire. Starlight put up her shield again, but it clearly wasn't as strong as before. She was severely burnt, she was shot, she had broken ribs, and had a horn probably about to burn out after that uncontrolled beam. Oh, and I found my shotgun. Stripe and Cobalt continued to take shots at the shield, while I began alternating between my pistol and shotgun whenever I had to reload. She wouldn't get us the same way twice. And from the first volley of gunfire, the difference to before was immediate. She was clearly struggling to maintain the shield, slowly taking steps back in a feeble attempt to flee, moving backward all the way to the mouth of the cave. Her shield was flickering, and she was clearly in considerable pain. Any second. Enough! Before I could even register what was happening, her shield was propelled outwards and knocked me back onto my ass. And then I felt a familiar sensation come over me as I was lifted into the air and slammed back to the ground again. I couldn't move, my limbs were locked up. No matter how much I struggled, there was nothing I could do. And a quick glance around showed that my friends were in the same predicament as I was. And there stood Starlight Glimmer, panting heavily as her horn glowed brighter than any I'd ever seen. Idiot! You're past burnout! You'll kill yourself! Cobalt shouted. Just stay still. And then I felt it. It was strange, kinda like... This was beyond painful. It was like her magic was tearing at my soul. I could feel her magic scooping into me, beginning to peel my cutie mark away. And she was making it slow. Stop! 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 We shall rebuild our home together, Starlight said with a crazed, feral smile. You won't leave me. Your cutie marks won't take you away. You shall always be devoted to me. Cutie marks shall not interfere, not like they did with Sunburst. Who the fuck was Sunburst? Another red bar appeared on my eyes forward sparkle. My cutie mark was nearly gone now, and I could feel something sickly being poured inside me. Get it out! Get it out! A shadow raised above Starlight, but she was too entranced by our suffering to notice. I will keep you safe, and you will love me, Starlight said almost dreamily. Love me like he never could. There was surprisingly little blood as the stinger erupted through her eye socket. Sweet relief as the magic subsided, my cutie mark returning to its rightful place on my ass. Oh, scrap metal, I will never take you for granted again. My friends were also released, both looking relieved to have their respective cutie mark and zebra glyph intact. We all got to our hooves, retrieving our weapons as we examined our savior. Starlight Glimmer still stood on her hooves, lifeless, her bar having long blinked out, and... Oh, dear Celestia, I just saw what that stinger belonged to. Following from the barb impaled through the ghoul's skull, I could see it led up to a very large tail that ended in, well, only the largest fucking rad scorpion I've ever seen. Ah, Stripe mused. That would be what killed the rangers, no? The monster whipped its tail, and Starlight's corpse was flung unceremoniously out of sight. Then it turned to look at us. Scatter! I barely dodged away as a massive pincer sought to claim my head. I ran a good few meters before turning and opening fire on the massive behemoth of a scorpion. My bullets pinged off the creature's natural armor as it casually struck its tail at me. I entered Sats for a moment just to gain my bearings. When I canceled the spell, I ducked to the side, flinching as the stinger embedded in the dirt and sprayed mud all over me. This was not how I thought this day was going to go. Its armor is too thick! Stripe shouted as she fired a shot to gain its attention. Go for the eyes! Eyes. Easier said than done, especially when it turns its back to you. It swung its tail around, and while Cobalt's shield took the most of the impact, it didn't stop him from being bounced across the ground like a really misshapen bouncy ball. Stripe followed that shot with another as the creature began to bear down on her, and I'd be damned if I was going to sit here like an idiot. I holstered my pistol and brought my shotgun to bear, running up behind the monster and ducking down beneath its massive body. I moved between its many creepy legs and rolled out in front of the creature's butt-ugly face. Into Sats I went, and there went some of its eyes. Oh, it has a lot of those, too. The rad scorpion gave an enraged roar as pus and blood seeped from the eyes I'd ruptured with my shotgun. I had moved too fast to avoid its flurry of strikes, but I couldn't avoid being slapped to the floor by a rad scorpion equivalent to a backhoof slap. You know, as I laid there on the floor, I was beginning to realize that it and I had become too acquainted as of late. I heard an animalistic growl above me as I rolled onto my back, looking up at a stinger ready to strike. Another one of the monster's eyes went, and it retreated with a screech. I turned as it did, seeing Stripe with her sniper rifle held firmly in her hooves. "Leave him be, monster!" Another eye. I got back to my hooves, bringing my shotgun to bear as we each began to pepper the monster with bullets. It still had enough eyes to see, though we were doing our best to put an end to that. This thing really needs to just die already! But its armor was still too thick, and it was wising up about its eyes, protecting them with its claws whenever we got a clear shot, smart bastard. This thing had torn apart a group of power-armored steel rangers. How were we ever... Steel rangers? Oh yeah! I avoided another jab from the creature and rolled underneath it, running directly for the cave entrance, and Stripe kept it busy. Oh, and I passed a groggy kobold on the way. "Oh," he moaned, clutching his head. "Moan later," I told him as I shoved my shotgun into his bewildered hooves. "Go help Stripe, I got this." "Celestia, help us all," he muttered, reluctantly taking my gun and moving to keep the thing occupied. With the rad scorpion busy, I got to work. It was exactly where I had left it, in the middle of the dead rangers in a sorry state. The balefire egg launcher. It still had a single balefire egg loaded in, and I was a little nervous at its stability. Clearly they had tried to use it against the scorpion, but died before they could. The launcher itself was not in any kind of working condition, but I was quite good at fixing stuff. I recovered as many parts as I had on me from my saddlebags, also scrounging anything I could from the armor and weapons of the dead rangers. Small parts, large parts, all came together as I carefully unloaded the balefire egg and held up its launcher in my magic. It was a rugged-looking thing, about the length of a rocket launcher while being little more than an overcomplicated slingshot, really. Its launch mechanism was broken, so I replaced that first to the ambience of gunfire and giant monster roars. Once that was working, I replaced the trigger and ensured that all the inner workings were functioning correctly. I did not want this thing to detonate over me. "Scrap Heap! Yes, I know, you can't rush these things!" Still, it looked like it would function. Once. Honestly, the weapon was rusted to all hell. I was 70% confident that my repairs would allow it to fire, but I was betting it would crumple from the force of it. Well, here goes. From the corner of my eye came a shotgun blast before Cobalt was knocked back to the ground. The creature chose to ignore him and go for Stripe, and I lifted the launcher up in my magic, resting it on my shoulder as I took aim and... The monster pounced toward Stripe. She was too close to it. Worse, it had her backed up and cornered, the zebra lifting a rifle to strike at its eyes again. Only this time, the creature used a claw to batter the weapon aside before it struck out with its tail and drove its stinger into her torso. No! That fucking monster then retracted its stinger and let her slump to the ground. I could still see her bars. She was alive, but I couldn't fire while she was there, damn it! Then I saw a blue blur roll beneath the mutated monstrosity and unleash a shotgun blast to its face. Cobalt telekinetically grabbed the discarded sniper and then jumped onto Stripe. A single loud pop later, and they had both been teleported next to me. I engaged Sats immediately, targeted the monster wherever had the highest percentage with a single shot, and then fired. The balefire egg was propelled forwards, and as I predicted, the weapon crumbled to pieces a moment later. But it had done its job, and on contact with the creature, the balefire egg unleashed a magnificent explosion of green that sent me back to the dear old ground with the shock. The mushroom cloud encompassed the bowl before clearing away as my pip-buck clicked away from the presence of radiation. And the rad scorpion was nowhere to be seen. Nice thinking, Cobalt muttered as he dragged a healing potion from the bag and poured it down Stripe's throat. The massive hole in her barrel began to close up, though she only groaned in pain as she began to sweat buckets. She's poisoned, right? I asked. Celestia, damn it, I wasn't letting her die. Cobalt nodded, his eyes full of worry. Yes, I'd say so. And we don't have any antidotes. Maybe another healing potion? It won't help, those things don't cure poisons. Cobalt shot me down so cruelly. Scrap Heap, if she doesn't get an antidote for the poison, she's going to die. And the closest clinic is days away. She was going to die? No. I refuse. Fuck you, Wasteland! I refuse you! There had to be a way. Taking a look at our surroundings, I couldn't see much we could use. The Steel Rangers came up empty, and the radiation was still present from the blast, eating away at us. We had all our weapons, though ammo was getting low again. 3 healing potions. I had Cobalt give Stripe the last of the Med-X. Damn it! I looked into the cave, deep into the hive that held Stable 84. Stable 84. The stable will have a clinic, right? I grunted as I lifted Stripe onto my back and stood up. Cobalt looked at me in bewilderment. What are you doing? That stable is our only chance. And if we didn't make it in time... If there are changelings, we'll make them help us. If not, we'll do it ourselves. Got it? Cobalt stood there for a moment, looking at me as if I had grown a second head. I had no time for his hesitation, and I hoped my glare made that perfectly clear. He seemed to get the message, giving me a nod. Good, let's go. I kept my pistol holstered as I began to move into the hive, keeping my shotgun at the ready for anything that may be inside. Cobalt followed my lead as we entered the abyss, moving through the monster's lair and into the hive beyond. I was going to save my friend. Celestia help anyone who tried to stop me.